Houston Mayor John Whitmire just marked his first 100 days in office. In that time, he's taken steps to improve the city's finances, public safety, infrastructure, mobility options, and delivery of services. On April 3rd, I had the chance to sit down with Mayor Whitmire for an event in front of a live audience at the Baker Institute. We talked about all that he's done and more, including why he decided to run for mayor and why he thinks more people should step up to run for office. For this special episode of Baker Briefing, we're sharing our conversation with the Houston mayor. Enjoy listening to it. I'm Ed Emmett, a fellow at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy in Houston, Texas, and this is Baker Briefing. Mayor? That sounds good, Mayor.
I still reply to Senator a lot.
I'm sure you do. Well, welcome to the Baker Institute.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with a personal question.
Sure.
And after so many years of service in the Texas legislature, and given how ugly politics has gotten in recent years, why on earth did you decide to become mayor? But let me say why I phrased it the way I did. Notice I didn't say, why did you decide to run for mayor? Because you may not remember, but a year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever you were first thinking about this, we shared lunch. And you asked me what I thought about you being mayor. And that's an unusual question, because usually politicians say, what do you think about me running for something? But so you were already thinking about being mayor, and so that's why I phrased it the way I did. So why'd you give up that comfy gig in the Senate?
Well, Ed, it's a calling. I don't think you would do what I'm doing if it wasn't a commitment to public service. When you start being a public servant at 22 years of age, knocking doors, doing it for the right reason to make a difference, I was enjoying my service in the state Senate. When I was approached to run by constituents on a Saturday morning, minding my own business, they called and said, our breakfast group just broke up, and I was asked to call you to see if you'd run. 3 years ago? Now, for full disclosure, I had thought about it in previous years. I drive down the street and think about what I would do if I was mayor. First day of school after COVID, Highland Heights Elementary in Acres Home, beautiful new school, beautiful kids, great program. Everyone was there. Superintendent, all the elected officials. I was leaving out of the parking lot with an assistant, and there was illegal dumping covering the ditch as high as a door seal. I made the comment long before I'd been approached to run. I told my staffer, if I was the mayor or the county commissioner, that'd be gone this afternoon. And that's what inspired me to run. I told them no that Saturday. They called back the next week and said the group wants to know what it would take to get you to consider running. And I said, well, first of all, that's a tricky question to ask a public servant, someone that's dedicated his life to others, what would it take to get me to run? I said, I'll tell you what, get in a car with me and let's drive across Houston. The homeless issue drives me nuts. Yes, we've done some good things, but yes, we have a lot of work to do. And I've been in office long enough, I've seen other models. Haven for Hope in San Antonio is my model. And if time allowed, I would describe their services: wraparound, workforce commission, mental health services, Veterans Association, to help people turn their lives around. I mentioned the homeless, I mentioned illegal dumping, and then I mentioned crosswalks. I live by Memorial Park. The Conservancy's made Blossom the main pedestrian entrance to the park. I have to pull out of my neighborhood several times a day. Westcott and Blossom, someone's going to get killed. People come around the roundabout, 50 miles an hour. When they get back on their straightaway, you've got families, joggers, bikers, everyone trying to get into the park, crossing Westcott. We've had serious accidents. So I called as a resident 311. No, strike that. I called my council person. They referred me to 311 to get a case number. Now, I've been dealing with constituent issues and problems for 50 years. If you called me about a need with TxDOT, I can't imagine telling you to call someone else before I call TxDOT. So I tried the 311 scenario and got nowhere, so I called back, was told to go to 311, and I said, no, as a senator, I will call Public Works. They said, first, Senator Whitmire, we can't afford it. I said, I'll help you raise the money. But we hadn't had enough accidents there. So I was ripe. I was ripe for a call because I was frustrated with constituent services and the conditions of Houston. Obviously, public safety is my highest priority. I work with law enforcement. I work with victims groups. I have my own life and grandkids and your families that I'm concerned about. We have too many violent repeat offenders on the streets of Houston. From my chairing criminal justice for 30 years, I believe I know part of the reason. It is unheard of for a capital murder to receive bond. It's just in my career, that would not even be a consideration. This afternoon, there are 1,800 people waiting to go to trial in Houston, Harris County for murder or capital murder. The problem is 900 of them are in jail. The other 900 are either out on bond or they're fugitives and we don't know where they are. It's the repeat violent offenders that are creating all the dangers for our families. So I got worked up that Saturday morning talking about our issues, how I felt as a Houstonian and certainly as a public official. So I said, I'll tell you what, you talk to your friends, I'll talk to my friends. I called police, I called fire, I called the LGBTQ plus community, I called the minority community. It took off. And then, of course, other interest groups in town said we got to block Whitmire. Because I'm independent, I didn't have to raise a lot of money. I'd built a war chest for my years in the Senate. I started talking about working across the aisle, and it frightened some folks that were comfortable in their current operations, conflicts of interest. I believe in collaboration. I'm the only Democratic senator in a Republican Senate. I don't politicize things. I don't make partisan issues out of public safety. And here I am today. I want to thank Rice. I want to thank Ed. You obviously got my attention to get out here. I wish that first grade teacher that held me back a year could see where I am today. I don't know where she is, but she did the right thing because it's worked. But to answer your question, and I apologize for my long answer, I got elected at 22, and I don't believe things like that happen by accident. I think it's divine intervention or certainly life. My friends at U of H senior year were going to ball games and concerts and fraternities, you name it. I was knocking doors. And after 10 years in the House and 40 in the Senate, I think it would be a sin for me to waste my experience. I'm down there for one reason, to make a difference. I'm not worried about the next election. If something happened, folks don't like my positions, I get my life back. I've never worked harder in my life. I start early and go late, 6 days, 7 days a week. I've got a great staff. We're down there for one reason, to make a difference. And that's why I'm here. And I want to let you know that Rice better hold on to you, because I'm looking for a place in government, Houston government, for you to serve. I know experience matters. And Ed, you didn't tell them the rest of our luncheon. I tried to get you to run for office. But anyway, Ed and I worked together in the legislature in the 70s. So you're a great public servant, and thank you for what you've done, and I really do think you ought to be in public service.
Well,
and this is one role for you, for sure.
This is public service in its own way. I like this. So after being mayor for 3 months, and back to that luncheon conversation, we had a very candid conversation about senator is one thing, mayor's 24/7, and I think you just indicated that. How have you adjusted, and what are the differences between being on the legislative side versus being in charge of the fourth largest city?
Well, no comparison. The legislature, as you know, meets 140 days every other year. You do a lot of committee work during the interim and constituent work, but you have time to think and read. You have to build a coalition to get anything done in the legislature. The mayor's job is a full-time job. I start early, go late, back-to-back meetings all day long, and none of them are minor meetings. The only thing I'm doing wrong probably is not pacing myself enough. I'm impatient. I don't have time to waste. I'm willing to give some of the best years of my life left to this, so I'm in a hurry. I don't deal with fools very well, you know, but I have to. I have to. But there's no comparison. This is a huge city. I heard the introduction, Mr. Ambassador. You painted a really accurate picture of Houston. I don't think we probably spend enough time talking about our challenges. One thing I'm restoring to City Hall is transparency. I want you to understand, as your question is, what I'm facing down there. We've really neglected city services for so long, kicking the can down the road on our finances. Public Works has got 100 empty staff positions. The Parks Department director tells me he has to shuttle workers to work sites because he doesn't have the vehicles. We know our trash garbage pickup is challenged. The previous mayor publicly said this is unsustainable. So I'm sharing with Houstonians what I'm finding. Public safety, HPD's got a major challenge right now where they actually code something that they can't get to incidents. Sexual assaults because they're understaffed. The firefighters go 8 years without a contract. I spoke to 31 cadets graduating the other day in the fire academy, unheard of small number. And I had to spend some time telling them, don't go somewhere after you're a licensed firefighter because they don't know the working conditions or what their benefits are going forward. So we train them, give them their accreditation, and then they go to Katy or Pearland or Austin. So we have a great city. I don't want anybody to leave here not thinking what our greatness is and our people. But city government could do so much more and so much better. And I'll be very transparent. We've got to have additional resources. We're under a revenue cap that the rest of the state's not even under. We have our own more restrictive revenue cap. We have services that are just not sustainable. And you see it in the condition of our infrastructure. We're trying to roll out tomorrow a water plan so you don't get these tremendous water bills because someone didn't revisit the sensors on the water meter. So I'm gonna just be honest, tell people what I found. I'm a Houstonian, I've got grandkids. I want this to continue to be, we've been discovered. People are coming here in large numbers. And we have so much to be proud of, the Med Center. I answer calls as a Houston senator from around the state to assist families getting their loved ones in MD Anderson. We're where people want to be. Our port, my colleagues in the legislature with all that cotton they grow in Lubbock, they wouldn't know what to do with it if it wasn't for the Houston port. I'm convinced when we land on Mars someday, they're going to say, Houston, we've landed. If you haven't been out to the spaceport, you need to. So I'm fired up. In fact, I'm going to get fired up in a minute and want to go back to work if we're not careful. But it's good for me to be able to share this with folks that also love and care for Houston. I love being a senator, but I love Houston more. And let's go ahead and have another candid conversation. I was very frustrated in Austin. When I went to Austin in 1973, we worked on public education, mental health, highways, water. They're not doing much of that anymore. It's mostly a social agenda, a political social agenda, partisan. So I get frustrated being on the Senate floor with folks that got elected on one issue, either to have reasonable gun regulation or to arm everybody. You got competing strong interests. And given the opportunity to come here and lead, it was just something that I felt like I needed to continue here. I do have to pace myself better because it's really hard. We had a little dust up in council today with the Prop A, where any 3 council members can put something on the agenda. We had to explain to some of the council members, it needs to go to committee first. You need to let the public be involved, not just 3 members decide, I'm going to show the mayor we can put something on the agenda. I agree with you. Put it on the agenda, but then let me refer it to the proper committee for vetting and to look for unintended consequences. Experience matters, and it's somewhat frustrating sometimes to work with new elected officials. I have to kind of remember what it's like when I was getting started, but times are different, and one thing that Houston's benefiting from is my working across the aisle. The land commissioner, Don Buckingham, and I spoke today about additional Harvey funding. When Lakewood had its tragedy shooting, the governor called me. Before I got down there, there was no communication between the city and Austin. And Austin's getting more and more involved, I think regrettably, in city business. We ought to let, when I got there, local control was the doctrine that you lived by. Now Austin, and it's partly partisanship because those big cities are blue and the state is red. But I have the skill set or the experience to bring those sides together, and Houston will benefit from that. And people come up to me all the time. Don't tell my security I still go out by myself and go to restaurants. They said, how can we help you? And I'm still trying to come up with the best answer, Ed. I'd say to citizens that come up to me, they just want to help. They're fired up. Houston's fired up right now about a change in administration. That's my take. I just say support me when I come out with some bold proposals. And that's one thing that's kind of interesting. What have I encountered? It's the unknowns, the freeze the first week. I could share with you when I called the superintendent, said, I'm going to close the city tomorrow. It's going to be dangerous on the roads. This was like 3 in the afternoon, and the superintendent said, well, I don't think we make education a high enough priority. And I'll let you know at 5 o'clock whether I'm not going to have school tomorrow. I was selling him on the idea that we ought to be consistent. If you don't want kids at home, if their parents are working at the city, you don't want city workers not going to work, and we're still having school. All the surrounding school districts had closed but HISD, and so he was selling me on the need to make education a necessity. And I said, Mr. Superintendent, you need to try to sell that on a clear day, but I'm going to close. So it's the things that you really can't prepare for, the Lakewood tragedy, the police coding of incidents that we couldn't get to them, over 200,000. But that's where experience kicks in, and the passion to get something done.
We sense your passion. You've
Sir?
Touched on a bunch of issues already.
Yeah, I probably don't give short answers.
No,
that's
you
awesome.
don't. I think you learned a lot of that in the Senate after you left the House, but we'll leave that. So let's talk about some issues. From your perspective, what's the most important issue or two facing Houston? Assuming one of them is going to be financial, the pension and all of that.
Yeah.
And do you think the public understands the challenges associated with those issues?
Well, probably not, because people are busy working, going to school, raising their families, and that's why they elect us to run our offices in cities. I think our mobility, obviously, is a real challenge. The safety of our mobility, getting back to public safety, we have practically no traffic enforcement anywhere. I'm trying to collaborate with other law enforcement agencies to return some traffic enforcement. People don't hesitate to run stop signs or red lights. The freeways, you'll get run over if you go the speed limit. I think our public transit system has to improve. We have to get greater ridership, but you're not going to do that until people understand, or we actually create a safe and reliable public transit system. I'll talk a little bit something that concerns me after 3 months, but it's not like I just got introduced to these issues 3 months ago. I've lived them and campaigned across Houston. Is our diversity. We celebrate our diversity properly, and rightfully we should. But you ought to run for office across Houston. You're pulled into each separate community. We need to remember that we're all in this together. The young lady that just expressed herself, I need to be able to go to the Jewish community and bring people together. We celebrate our diversity, but I'm pulled into separate communities, ethnic groups, sexual orientation groups, you can name it. And so I just am going to have a theme of trying to have everybody at the table. And I know we're stronger and smarter collectively than we are individually, and I think we lose that. But more specific, back to city services, I mentioned mobility. Obviously, I could spend the rest of the day talking about public safety. Fire response time is growing. Affordability. We've wasted a lot of federal funds on projects that the GLO, the General Land Office, is not approving. The previous administration bought about 900 apartments in flood plains. So, you know, another thing that drives home to me is we can't have two Houstons. And we're going in that direction. It should concern each and every one of us. I go to Denver Harbor, and they want their first sidewalk. They've never had a sidewalk over off of Lyons and Quitman. Then I go over in the Heights, which I've represented for years, and they're tearing up 3-foot sidewalks to put in 10-foot sidewalks. I think we just have to slow down and realize that we're all in this together, and we've got to not have better city services in one side of town than the other. And certainly the disparity in wealth is growing. Certainly the undocumented community is living in the shadows of this university. They're here, they're attending our schools, they're going to LBJ. So I go on a Sunday afternoon about 3 months ago, actually last fall, it'll be 5 months. A friend from out of town, I was showing her the diversity of our food establishments off of Westheimer, and I turned down Hillcroft to show her Gufton. And all the cars were coming towards me under West Park and turning in between some apartments. Being nosy and loving people, I wanted to see what was going on. So I turned in there, and as soon as I did, on the sidewalks are mostly Central Americans with their native foods, native clothing, having a great time. I parked, and then there was a flea market. I went in. Nobody would make eye contact. I think I must look like immigration or something. But there was their culture, there was their society, their children, over-the-counter drugs, clothing, toys, foods. And I told my friend, I said, the sad thing is none of them have insurance, or none of them even have health care. It's an emergency and they go to one of our charity hospitals. And I said, but also they're our workforce tomorrow. So it just concerns me that some Houstonians are completely blind to that. I understand immigration and border security, but I also understand human needs. And when they're in our community, we've just got to make them a part of our fabric. They're in HISD, and I don't think my colleagues from around the state understand what teaching is all about in an urban setting like ours. I was talking to the superintendent of A-Leaf last spring, and he says, we have little time for reading and writing. We just got Afghanistan refugees. A 6th grader from Afghanistan as a refugee doesn't even know the proper use of a restroom. Was raised in a village, in a tent. So he just might get up in the 6th grade and go pee in the corner. And I find that, even with my worldly view, I found that shocking. So I think not only locally, we have to be more aware of our fellow Houstonians, but Austin for sure. Austin is, in my experience, not representative of the state views as we approach social services or health care, infrastructure. They're running a surplus in Austin these days. We're going to have a tremendous surplus next session in Austin. We need to play catch up on state services and infrastructure. We need to make public education a priority. And so I could just go on and on. You're hearing John Whitmire empty his soul as a public servant and as a father and a grandfather and a Houstonian. That's why I ran, and that's why I look forward to going to work every day. And the only challenge I'll have is to pace myself. I've got a great team in place, and I would invite everyone here to get involved, and let's go to work.
Let me ask two fundamental questions.
That was not a short answer.
One I'm gonna drag you back to the pensions, and you in less than 3 months negotiated a settlement with the firefighters and trying to get that whole issue. How's that going to get paid for?
You know, we're going to put everything on the table. I could start with saying we're the only city in the state, major city, that doesn't have a garbage fee. Now, about 2/3 of Houston has private service, so you've got to factor that in. I will ask the public to make an exception for public safety on the revenue cap. We're going to share resources with our TERS and management districts. And let me tell you a really bright spot that I'm excited about. The collaboration I'm having with county commissioners. Commissioner Briones is such a breath of fresh air. She's already joining us on some infrastructure projects. She wants to make a city-county project in Memorial Park, redo that pool, redo the exercise rooms with some county money. She just called me up and said, John, I've been listening to you. Not Ed, that's the sheriff. Adrian Garcia, East Side, and then of course, Tom Ramsey. So Ramsey's already told me in his precinct, he'll pay half the cost of the roads. And then of course, Metro. Metro's sitting on $1 billion right now. Sitting on $1 billion. They get $1.2 billion per year in sales tax. There's some great new proposals. I think we need to make certain that they listen to the residents, that they are going to have the ridership that they're projecting. There's frustration and disappointment on the rapid transit along Post Oak. It's got about 700 people a day riding it. So I think in the near term, Metro needs to help us with sidewalks and roads and pedestrian crosswalks. We need to increase their ridership before we take on new ventures. So, you know, it's just bring everybody at the table, be honest with the people, transparent. Ultimately, the public will make that decision. But, you know, a projected increase in the revenue cap for public safety, an average Houstonian's home is $350,000, which I find amazing. If you start thinking about, you know, I think my first home after I got married was $67,000 in Timber Grove, pretty nice home. So it gets back to that affordability. But it would be $15 a month to have the response time for fire and police that I think a safe city needs. We're a great city, but we've got to protect our investment and go forward and be transparent. And you know, there's some franchise fees from the utilities that we can look at. You know, other cities have such resources we don't. Austin and San Antonio fund about 1/3 of their government through a utility that they own. I can go on and on. Houston's been boxed in. Part of the reason is the breakdown in relationships between Austin and Houston. I know for a fact because I know all the parties. Turner wouldn't talk to Abbott, Abbott wouldn't talk to Turner. Hidalgo won't make a call to a Republican state capitol. They don't want to have nothing to do with her. Folks, we're suffering from those type of relationships. And it's already improving under me. It'll only get better because of personalities, largely.
Since you...
And wanting to get things done. I'm a can-do guy. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, you mentioned the county, and so, you know, that's got my attention.
The county?
The county. And so I think most people don't understand Harris County has over 2 million people living in unincorporated Harris County. They have no ordinance making power. They don't get any sales tax. The legislature is doing to the county the same thing they're doing to the city. How do you see the city and the county? You mentioned Commissioner Briones, and that's good. What about annexation, special districts? I mean, the county can't keep going the way it's going with providing. Dallas County has less than 10,000 people living in its unincorporated area. We have over 2 million. How's the city and county really going to work together as a unit? And beyond that, the region, HGAC and
I'm glad you asked
and all that stuff.
And first of all, everything, if you don't remember anything else I say today, remember this: elections matter. So under that premise is, I believe Harris County in Houston has a great opportunity to cut out the duplication. You and I have discussed this. We don't need a Houston library system and a Harris County library system. We don't have the luxury of doing that. So we need to move in the direction of an urban government. We don't need a Houston park system and a Harris County park system. Even an animal shelter. You got a Houston, Harris County, and you ask, how am I going to afford some of these services? By cutting out the duplication and reaching out. I named 3 of the county commissioners that are already working in collaboration. I hope that grows. You know, Austin, getting back to elections matter, just believes in that they're not going to give the county ordinance making power. It gets back to, hell, they're trying to get involved in running the cities. So they're not going to turn over more authority to the counties. And it's the same bad blood there that exists at the city prior to my getting down there. So I just think the public's going to have to demand better results, hold people accountable. If you're playing politics with your money, that needs to come to a complete halt. But you know, at one time, I forget what the numbers were, that our unincorporated part of Harris County was like the 7th largest city in the U.S. And so it's a real challenge. You see, we have a great city and a great county, but we've got to prepare for our future. And that's, I mean, today, you take a snapshot, we all choose to live here. Most of us have a choice. I want people to not only work in Houston, I want them to live in Houston. Bob Lanier talked about it, parks to standard, sidewalks. We want people to not only work in Houston, but live here. And I'm going to do everything I can to work with the county commissioners. I will try to mend fences between Austin and Houston, Harris County, but it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. But cut out the duplication. That would be something. I mean, we got 2 library systems, 2 parks, and I could go on and on and on.
No, we used to joke that
law enforcement. We got 85 law enforcement agencies in Harris County. They don't even talk to each other. They can't talk to each other and help each other on the radio. North side of Little York is unincorporated, sheriff's office, constable. Across the street, city of Houston. So we could get the force multiplier just in public safety or all the other services that we need.
So you are obviously more knowledgeable about the neighborhoods just because of all the work you've done over the years. But you know, as I drive through some of the close-in parts of Houston, whether it's Edo or Midtown or 3rd Ward or 2nd Ward, all this new residential construction. And at the same time, the vacancy rate in offices downtown is high. The energy corridor is beginning to empty out a little bit. What do you see as the future growth patterns in Houston, and what's going to drive those patterns?
Well, jobs, quality of life. I was focused on downtown Houston before I got elected mayor. Last session, we created an entertainment district. It was brought to me by the city. They thought I could get it through the legislature because of my working across the aisle. Starting last September, 3 miles in every direction from the George Brown Houston First, which is an entity of the city of Houston, is receiving all the hotel occupancy tax. We're going to enlarge George Brown. We're going to do another convention hotel. There'll be retail with 59 and 45 going underneath the ground. Behind George Brown will be a green space that'll just really be amazing. So we've got to revitalize downtown. There was an issue on the agenda today to start charging parking to 2 a.m., 2 o'clock in the morning. The council member had not talked to Central Houston or Houston First or any of the retail establishments. We need to encourage an entertainment, vibrant Central Houston. And we haven't even talked about flooding. As I sit here and think about the energy corridor and how people are moving out there, British Petroleum and others have said one more Harvey and the flooding that they experienced, they're going to consider all their options. They don't have, international company does not have to be in Houston. So we need to improve our flooding. City needs to do a better job on maintenance. 2-inch rains will flood most of our streets or many of them, but it's the Barker Reservoir that needs to be strengthened where the west side of Houston doesn't get flooded at 2 in the morning without any notice. I know it was a tough call. You might have been in office then, I don't recall.
Yes, I think I was.
It was a tough call, but it was for the integrity and the survival of most of Houston. We've got to deal with the flooding. But back to your specific question. We've just got to make Houston safe and operate better, and people are coming in large numbers. It's amazing if you drive across Houston. I don't care where you go, the mid-rises that are just showing up on every corner. There's been activists at the city that are reducing some of our lane capacity, and I'm seeing the demand for mobility and safe pedestrian crosswalks. At the same time, others are trying to reduce our general mobility lanes, I would call them. So I think we need to have a grown-up discussion about there's room for everybody. Let's have your recreation if you're riding a bike, safe passage. But whether it's an evacuation or going to work or school, I think we have to preserve our mobility. And it gets pretty heated sometime, even around my office. But I think it's quality of life. The very short answer to your question, where do we go from here? You've got to make people want to not only work, but live in Houston. Public safety, infrastructure, city services like sanitation. We've got to do away with the broken water mains. Just run a first-class city. And we're a great city. But we've kicked too many cans down the road for way, way too long. And everybody needs to speak up, hold their council and their mayor accountable.
Now these are trouble. These are questions from the audience.
I can only imagine.
Let's start with, has your vision of what you want to accomplish as mayor changed since discovering the $230 million budget deficit?
No.
Good.
That should not surprise. That should not surprise too many people. I said it during the campaign. I was asked about city finances. The answer then and is now. Until we get down there, we really don't know the true picture. We did not ever have a $400 million surplus. That's federal funding. We weren't paying our bills. We were in court with the firefighters. Any settlement, the partnership was projecting $800 million to $1 billion. We resolved it at $650 with some ongoing, obviously, salary increases over the next 5 years. No, and like I think in the introduction, I've worked with other mayors. We have sold property. We've messed with the books. Houston's had an ongoing shortfall for years, and so I'm the first one that's laying it out and going to give us options. We're going to fix it for our children and grandchildren, or we'll continue to have poor services, but it's not going to serve our future. I mean, we've got to fix it. And I'm going to paint the picture. If people don't like what I have to say in my proposals, then I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. I'm being honest. We're getting rid of conflicts of interest. I can't begin to tell you the wasteful spending I'm encountering, the drainage leaks and the broken water mains. They go out and give people $6 million contracts to repair them. The press, thank goodness for a free press, will go to the stated address of the contractor. It's an apartment project that no one will even answer the door. We're getting rid of all that. Now, what the total savings will be, not enough to run the city, but I'm going to scrub it, get rid of conflicts of interest, look for all available funds. If we still don't have enough, I'm going to tell you about it, and then I'll respect the public's views. But I have confidence in Houstonians.
Well, and that touched on one of the critical questions of where's the money going to come from to fix the infrastructure. You mentioned water, and I don't know the exact statistic, but several mayors ago, a mayor said as much as 30% of the water is lost before it ever gets to a residence.
I don't know about the
building.
percentage, but all you got to do is drive down the street, certainly during the droughts and the broken water mains. I mean, it's everywhere. We're in a consent decree agreement with the feds. Water bills went up April 1st, 3 days ago, I guess, 10%, which was brought forward from the previous administration. So, you know, I had them redo Houston Avenue, somewhat controversial, but the first responders said they couldn't use the location at Washington and Houston, so I said redo the design. When they got started, the infrastructure below the surface was crumbling, broken gas line. So, you know, just look at it. We have a broken infrastructure. And so where are we going to get the money? I'm going to try to get Austin, the federal government, and then at the end of the day, we may have to do we've always had pay-as-you-go in recent years. So we may have to do some bonded indebtedness to fix our infrastructure. But it didn't get like this overnight, and it'll take some years to repair it. But when I got a county commissioner, because he's willing to get things done, say, I'll share the cost with you, that is a huge step forward.
It really is. This is, I know criminal justice has been one of your passions for a long time, and you've mentioned a lot about it today. But the question is simply, does the mayor have any input on fixing the court system to get habitual criminals off the street?
You can speak out, and I won't hesitate to speak out. It's too important. I have a responsibility to protect Houstonians. We have some serious problems at the county district court level, and I won't hesitate to speak out. The backlog has to be taken care of. They're waiting way too long. You know, it's getting old to blame everything on Harvey, but we still have some judges that are operating by Zoom. Try that on. It's a defense attorney, defendant's dream to just reschedule these offenses. When I said a while ago, 1,800 murders or capital murders waiting to go to trial, it's not fair to the victims. The evidence gets old, and the worst problem is many of these defendants are repeat offenders. So I'll speak out. We've got to get additional law enforcement involved. We got to get our forensics lab. The city of Houston, it takes a year to get a ballistic test completed so you can even prepare for trial. Nobody talks like this. You know, let me tell you what, you get me on a roll here. What really frustrates me is the spin that I encountered. One Safe Houston, the buyback of guns. There's not a crook one turned in his gun, I promise you. So we got to quit just dealing with sound bites. The cancer cluster relocation in Fifth Ward, there was no plan in place to do that. In fact, if you go talk to the residents, they think it's a land deal. That the developers at City Hall and their friends at City Hall were trying to get them to relocate so they could develop it. And you go over there, it's probably getting better city services and infrastructure than certainly Acres Home that I represent. So back to public safety, you got to call it like it is. We have some lack of resources in forensics. The DA needs additional resources. and partly some of the philosophy of some of the judges. Some of the judges are working hard and certainly doing a good job, but we have some judges that do not want to hold people accountable. I've been robbed at gunpoint in '92, January, begged a guy, mass robber in my garage on New Year's Day not to shoot me, my wife, and 9-year-old. He got 25 years. He didn't commit any crime after that. So I believe you lock up people you're afraid of, not those that you're mad at. You know, I believe in second chance. I led the nation when I was chairing criminal justice in treatment, drug and alcohol. Certainly mental health plays a major role. But if somebody puts a gun in your face, I'm not going to give him another try. And I don't apologize for that. We built a large number of prisons to lock up violent offenders. Unfortunately, there's some people that just will kill you. And it happens. And part of it is there are repeat. The guys you see holding someone up at a convenience store does not do it one time. That's his or her profession. They're getting ready right now for what they're going to do this evening. And we don't have to live like that. And I don't apologize for being tough and smart on crime. I do believe in rehabilitation. And I don't think you make the sex workers on Bissonnette criminals. You make the persons that are using that trade the criminals. And I'm going to propose to HPD in the near future, put the users on the 5 o'clock news. That'll work. Get the ladies in treatment, life skills. Get them away from their human traffic control environment. So it's just, I try to make the community safer. I'm going to speak out. We do have issues at the courthouse. Elections matter, and we can just do better. I'm pretty fired up, and we've got to have additional resources.
And it's late in the day and you're fired up, so this is good. But so
I stay fired up.
You know, we talked earlier about all the housing that's being built near downtown and in neighborhoods. That's pretty expensive housing. That's not affordable housing, and people are being displaced. So what are your thoughts about how do we provide affordable housing for people who need it, so they don't end up on the streets, or they don't end up, you know, having to go to the far reaches of the county?
It starts at the top, and I was pleased to appoint Mike Nichols, who led the Homeless Coalition. Now he's going to head the city's housing department. If you look at some of the Housing Authority, which is a separate entity in the housing department, they're building a facility there on Middleton Street near Second Ward in a near environmental hazard area. You can't waste your resources. And the land commissioner wants $46 million back from the city of Houston because we didn't complete the affordable housing and single family homes that the city had committed to. We dealt with it today. We've got 3 parcels of land that we were going to just list with realtors, see what return we could get for them, to pay back the money to the general land office, who owns the money to HUD because the city did not comply with the requirements. So Ed, it's a real challenge to have the affordable housing with inflation and the demand for property in Houston, but we're committed to making Houston the most affordable housing city. I told Mike to do it for the large cities. He wants to do it for any city, and it's just cut out the wasteful spending and do it for the right reason and remove the conflicts of interest. But it is a challenge across the nation because of, certainly in high growth areas like ours, I mean, the land values are going up. I mean, and don't even get me started on the property tax issue, because as long as we rely upon property taxes as our main source, we'll continue to have inequities. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day.
Since I started,
and that's what Austin's using its surplus for, primarily to buy down the property tax costs. But schools still depend on property taxes for their funding, and that's why you go to Deer Park with the Shell refinery across the street. They got the best of everything, and you go to other school districts and they are suffering.
Since I started with sort of a personal question. I
Sure.
want to end with one. You were 22 when you took office. You were 21 when you were running, I guess. Senior in college. That 1972 election, there are a few of us who remember that. I think there were 76 freshman legislators out of 150.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them were about your age, people, Hawkins Menifee and Ron Waters, and in their early 20s.
Yeah.
What advice and inspiration can you give to young people interested in jumping into what has to be described as a hyper-partisan, rather ugly political world of today? Because, we're not going to be here.
I would say do it, because there's not a more rewarding experience in life to take a call from a mother whose son is incarcerated and he can't get his insulin and no one will listen to him or her, and I get on the phone and have the experience to call the chaplain. Would you see that Rob Newell gets his deal? Or a mother calls you and says, the correction officer's horse, they have row workers in the fields. And my son says, if the correction officer has his horse bite my son in the back again, he's going to hit him with a hoe, which will lead to his death. If you like getting involved in saving people's lives and quality of lives, there's nothing like it. It is a high that you can't get. And I see Angela Blanchard, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. If you like to be providing basic services and seeing the smile on people's face and the genuine thank yous, it's a calling like none you'll have. One of the things, somebody asked me the other day, what do you enjoy about your job the most? I walk through the halls of City Hall and I shake hands with everyone. The housekeepers, when I shake their hands, they can't believe it because no one's been nice to them. I was very fortunate to be raised. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And if you can do that as a public official, I take my time in restaurants. Anybody wants a picture, they get it. Because when I was a junior, I guess, at U of H, there was a state representative from Pasadena. We didn't have assigned seating, so I was a political science major, and I'll never forget, if you got to sit by this state rep, who, by the way, in all due respect to all the state reps, I'm not that impressed as much as I'm not as impressed as I was when I was a 20-year-old college student. But if he sat next to me, that made my day. So I have to remember what it was like for me to meet my first public official. I have many friends that are state reps, senators, congressional people. So now they become my friends. And like I said, I've become a little desensitized to how great that experience is. But when I shake hands with people at City Hall, the housekeepers or folks that I meet in the public, I know I'm making their day, and it makes my day. So I still think Houston's greatest days are in front of it. I know my greatest days are in front of me because each day I'm still learning, and I'm going to use that experience and passion on behalf of the people that I want to put a smile on their face.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thank y'all.
I was going to say join me in thanking Mayor Whitmire, because I think you've seen what drives this man. And frankly, that's what's going to drive this city to a better place. So
I think we have a real opportunity if we just stay united and go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Mayor.
Thank you.
That's our episode. Thanks for listening. Baker Briefing is brought to you by the Baker Institute for Public Policy, which provides meaningful, nonpartisan policy analysis on the most critical challenges facing Texas, the U.S., and the world. Baker Briefing is produced by Victoria Jupp, Shannon Moriarty, and Karina Zimmel. AV production is led by Kevin Young. Our interns are Rice University students Riley Barker, Gray Beaubien, and Maria Marcus. Be sure to visit us at bakerinstitute.org to learn more.